Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today to tell you a little bit about Booktopia. This is an annual book event that I just attended this weekend with my mother, and it's just an amazing, very unique kind of thing. And so I wanted to share it with you. I'm going to be sharing some photos and a few video clips, as well as, the books that were covered and just the excitement of it all. So first of all, Booktopia, which has the tagline, "Where authors and readers meet," is an annual event held at the Northshire Bookstore in Manchester, Vermont. This is an amazing bookstore with amazing people working there, and they've been doing this for a long time. Booktopia was started by the hosts of the Books on the Nightstand podcast. I think the first one might have been held around 2011, but I'm not entirely sure about that. The hosts of that were Ann Kingman and Michael Kindness, and their podcast became so popular, people wanted to meet in person, so they started hosting Booktopia. At the time, what they were doing was hosting it at different bookstores around the country. So there might be, now Northshire in Vermont was the very first one they did, and they went back there every year. But they also would go to like Wisconsin, Mississippi, California, so that wherever you lived, you could get to a Booktopia. So in 2015, which was the first year that I attended, they announced it would be the last Booktopia. And that's why I finally went. I'd been listening to the podcast and hearing how amazing this sounded, for years. And then when they said, this is going to be the last one, I said, I have to go. So I called my mom. I asked if she wanted to go with me. It began an annual tradition for us. So in 2015, she and I went up to Vermont, attended our first Booktopia. Now, once Ann and Michael did stop hosting it, the next year, Northshire announced that they would be hosting it themselves. So everyone who had been there before was thrilled to hear that the tradition would continue. And ever since then, they have been holding Booktopia the first weekend in May every year, except for the last two, of course. And so everyone was really excited this year for it to be back on. So there are a lot of people like my mother and I that go back year after year, but there are always new people there too. So I highly encourage you to consider this if you can get to Vermont next May, because it is such a unique event and so much fun. So the idea is the booksellers at Northshire Bookstore choose usually about 8 authors who have new releases. It's usually new releases in the months before Booktopia. And a lot of us try to read the books ahead of time, or as many as we can, but it's not required. And then when we get together in Vermont, you sign up for different authors' talks. So these are not like your typical author reading, book signing at a bookstore, because lots of people have already read the book. So it's a lot more interactive. During the author talk, there's a lot of, many of them do read a small excerpt, but then there's a lot of going back and forth, the readers asking the author questions, talking about the book, but without spoilers. And it's just a really unique experience. It's like a bunch of little book group discussions that happen throughout the weekend. So I'll just briefly tell you about this year's books and authors. First, there was Lucky Turtle by Bill Rohrbach. Now, Bill is a return Booktopia author. He had been there on a previous year, and this is his latest novel that was just released last week. So I didn't have a chance to read it, but I did buy a copy while I was there, and he signed it for me. Haven't read it yet, so don't know a lot about it. I know it's about a 16-year-old girl who is sent to a reform camp in, I think, Montana, which is totally different from her life in Massachusetts. So that's kind of the setup. Next up is Black Cloud Rising by David Wright Faladay. This is an amazing historical fiction novel that is all about an all-Black regiment during the Civil War. So these are former slaves who, when they were freed, chose to join up with the Union Army. It is fascinating. It's engrossing. It is based on fact, and the main narrator was indeed a real person. The author did amazing research for this book, and he had written a nonfiction book about the narrator who's at the center of this, and then decided he just had to learn more about this all-Black regiment and write about them. It's excellent, and I highly recommend it. And the author was really wonderful. Next up was The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum. This is another amazing book. This is how it is at Booktopia, because the booksellers at Northshire just pick the most incredible books. This begins with a mystery, but there's so much more to it. It's about a Black violinist, a very, very high-level violinist, whose $10 million Stradivarius violin that's been passed down through his family is stolen. So there's a mystery, but it's also a family drama, historical fiction, and looking at the history of both the violin and Ray, the violinist's family. It's a wonderful, wonderful book and very hard to put down. Now, unfortunately, Brendan got sick and could not attend Booktopia at the last minute. But he did do a Zoom call for an hour with Booktopia up on a big screen so that everybody could listen. So I'll show you a couple of brief video clips from his Zoom talk.
Or anything, I'm an open book. Yeah, these are comic books on my desk. These are my to-be-read comic books. I'm a huge comic book guy. They're just, I'm sorry. I'm kind of a dork that way, but and that's totally fine. I just wanted one person to like it. And when I got the call that Good Morning America had chosen it as their February book club pick, I mean, I was driving. I had to pull over. I literally had to stop, and I could not believe it. This book that I just kind of wrote as I was sitting, gaining 150 pounds, eating on my couch, just, someone liked it, and it's going to be nationally recognized now. And to me, that is just, it's just unbelievable. And my face still hurts from smiling composer. He's bigger than Bach and Beethoven, and everyone knows his name. His 150th anniversary celebration is coming up, and his family foundation is throwing this huge worldwide gala. So they hire a musicologist to do some research into this composer. During his research, the musicologist discovers that this composer may not have written any of this music, and he may have appropriated it from a Black woman who we now know would be living with autism, and the family will stop at nothing to keep it a secret. I know.
Now, since Brendan couldn't be there in person, that left a hole in the schedule. So at the very last minute, they found a local author who was willing to step in and take Brendan's place. and his name was Steve Scheinken, and he was the author of Fallout, Spies, Super Bombs, and the Ultimate Cold War. So this is a nonfiction book for middle graders. And Steve explained during his talk that he used to write textbooks. And the stuff that he thought was the most interesting, the most engaging, funny stories even, the textbook editors always took out. So he decided to write nonfiction for middle graders so that they could see the fun side of history. So this is all about Cold War spies. It's nonfiction, it's completely factual, but it's all based on these really funny, interesting, fascinating stories. So the idea is to engage kids in history in a way that's really interesting and fun. Next up, The Verifiers by Jane Peck. Jane sat at our table Friday night. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I got to know her pretty well during the weekend. That's the unique thing about Booktopia. The authors are just hanging out with the readers all weekend long. So anyway, I loved this book too. I know it sounds like I loved everything, but again, the booksellers just choose incredible books. So The Verifiers is mystery and suspense. The main character is Claudia Lynn. She comes from a fairly traditional Chinese-American family, and she's sort of the black sheep in the family. So she hasn't told her family yet that she has a new job as a verifier. She's working for a company that people can hire to investigate their match on one of the dating sites. So the idea is, if you're a little suspicious, things seem too good to be true, or you've seen some red flags, and the person you're communicating with on a dating site, you can hire Claudia's company to investigate and find out who the person really is, and if they are who they say they are. So that's the setup. At the beginning of the novel, they've got a new client, a woman who comes in. She asks them to investigate two different men, one who refuses to meet in person, obvious red flag, and another who she has met in person and has a bit of a relationship with, but as she's wondering if it's too good to be true, if he's hiding something. So Claudia begins to investigate. Before the investigation is completely closed, the woman dies. Claudia is a huge fan of detective novels, which is a really fun part of this book. And so she begins investigating what is kind of a suspicious death. Her bosses tell her not to follow up. They ask her to drop it. She doesn't listen. So that's the setup. So it's a mystery. It's suspenseful, but it is also very, very funny. The author, Jane, has a wonderful sense of humor, and it's woven throughout the novel. I was laughing out loud quite a few times. So that's The Verifiers by Jane Peck. Next up is the book that I'm reading right now on my Kindle. It's The Year of the Horses by Courtney Mom. So this is a memoir about the author's struggles with depression, very severe depression, when she's a young mother, and how she returns to her childhood passion of horses and horseback riding as a way of healing. So I'm not too far into it yet, about 25%, but I'm enjoying it. It's well written and interesting. She goes back and forth between talking about her childhood, maybe some early indications that she might have struggles as an adult, her time with horses, and her life now as an adult seeking help. Back in March, I read 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau by Ben Shattuck. So this is another memoir but it's really unique. In it, he follows 6 different walks that Thoreau took and wrote about. So he's looking into Thoreau's essays and writings, his journals, retracing his steps on some of these walks. So it's a combination. The author has really beautifully woven together his own personal experience. He was struggling with some of his own things when he began this book. He didn't know it was going to be a book. When he began this sort of mission to follow some of Thoreau's walks. So it's about his own personal experience. He weaves into it Thoreau's experiences and writings. There are excerpts from Thoreau in here. And some just beautiful nature writing about the places he visits and what he sees and experiences. I absolutely loved this book. I loved meeting the author, who was very interesting and entertaining. Definitely recommend this one. The first book I read for Booktopia was Country of Origin by Dalia Azeem. This is a novel that is, again, it's one of those novels with so many different elements. It is an immigration story. It is a multi-generational family story. It is 2 different coming-of-age stories, mother and daughter. It's about mental illness and parenting and family and immigration and loneliness. There's just so much here. It begins in Egypt in 1952. So it's also historical fiction. And that's a piece of history I really knew nothing about. It's fascinating. The story is just really engaging, and I loved it. And meeting the author was wonderful. Last book for Booktopia was Trust by Hernan Diaz. He was nominated for a Pulitzer for one of his earlier books. This book just came out just before the weekend, so I haven't had a chance to read it. So I'll just read you the little summary that was provided. At once an immersive story and a brilliant literary puzzle, Trust engages the reader in a quest for the truth, while confronting the deceptions that often live at the heart of personal relationships, the reality warping force of capital, and the ease with which power can manipulate facts. He did read an excerpt at the last day at Booktopia, and it sounds very interesting. So those were the books at Booktopia. Let me give you an idea of what we did there. So the first day, on Friday, everybody arrives. And here I am in lovely Manchester, Vermont for Booktopia. Down at the end of the block there, you can see the Northshire Bookstore, which hosts Booktopia. I'll be going there in about an hour or so. For now, I'm gonna get some breakfast. And this is the best breakfast place in the entire nation, maybe the world, up for breakfast. And it's called that because you have to go up. So I'm meeting some friends here. Wow, that was an amazing breakfast. As always, up for breakfast is the best. And now I'm headed over to Northshire Bookstore for the start of Booktopia. I've been waiting 3 years for this. With your entry, you get a $50 gift card to the bookstore. So lots of shopping going on over the weekend. I personally got a stack of books for my husband for Father's Day and my son for his birthday, and one for me. And then one of the first things we do is a large group thing with the booksellers taking turns telling us about their favorite books that they recommend. Each one goes through like 5 or 6 different books that they've read that they recommend. This is just like so much fun for book lovers because you hear about books that you might not otherwise have heard about. The books that each bookseller is talking about are books that they're passionate about. It's just a lot of fun. And everybody leaves there, saying, I want to read everything. So you always come out of there with a long TBR list. Friday afternoon, there are some of the author talks, and you decide which ones you want to go to. And then Friday night is my favorite part. It's a lot of fun. It's a group dinner held in a large space where, besides dinner, we do a Yankee book swap where everyone brings a book to swap. We do book trivia after dinner, which is a whole lot of fun. And author Jane Peck was at our table. She was excellent at book trivia. We were very glad to have her on our team. It's just a lot of fun. Like I said, some of the same people come back year after year, so it's wonderful to see old friends. But you also make a lot of new friends because there are always new people there or people you haven't met yet. So that was Friday night. Saturday is mostly author talks during the day. And again, you choose which ones you want to go to. And then Saturday evening, they do like a wrap up where each of the authors talks for 10 minutes. They can do whatever they want. They can talk about whatever topic they like. Some read excerpts from their books. Some talk about their books. Some talk about a completely different topic. But they're always interesting. And the photos that I included of the authors throughout this video were mostly from that Saturday night wrap-up session. And then it's finished. But in between, Manchester, Vermont has wonderful restaurants. So in between, you're meeting up with people in restaurants, having good meals, talking books. It's just a weekend devoted to books. So that makes it a whole lot of fun. I will show you a few more photos of some of our meals and fun with friends. And that was Booktopia 2022. And we got home. We've got a group on Facebook for Booktopia. And we got home and everybody was saying, I can't wait till 2023. It's just so much fun. So if you think you can get to Vermont next May, plan on first weekend in May, Booktopia at the Northshire Bookstore. You won't regret it.